want to make a claim that as of right now and moving forward, AI will always be capable of completing text only assessments. And not only completing text only assessments, but completing them with a high level of accuracy. And this will just get, that accuracy will just get better and better and better. So, in this session, I want to introduce the idea that some tasks are going to be copy and pastable by AI. They already are. That will just become more and more. But depending on how you frame the task and think about the human advantage, what can humans do really well that AI can't? What can AI do really well? Meshing those together and creating opportunities to collaborate with AI. That's kind of what I want to introduce in this session. So, welcome to AI Amazing Modern Assessments. Assessing learning in the age of AI is what we're going to talk about. And in this session, I'm going to introduce one thought. This is by far not the only way to think about assessing learning in the age of AI. It's just one idea, not meant to be that every assessment needs to look at this. To provide you a framework and some rules of thumb for thinking about crafting assessments that are able to collaborate with AI and aren't just copy and pastable. So my name is Lindy. I live in Bozeman, Montana. So I am right here in the southwest corner of the state near Yellowstone National Park. I'm a lifelong educator. I started teaching middle school and high school. My classroom was a computer lab, which is what, long story short, got me working in EdTech. So I have a business in Tech Graded PD where I help teachers, schools, EdTech companies with unpacking the effects of technology on education via the school level, the classroom level, the instructional level, whatever it may be. I would love to connect with you. I am at Lindy Hockenbary on all the social networks. Hockenbary is Bary at the end. Would love to connect with you and know what you think about my thoughts in this session or anything related to education. I am actually working on my second book, A Teacher's Guide to AI. I'm hoping it's going to be out soon. It might even be out by the time you watch this session here. And I am going to do a drawing for this. So I will draw the summer learning series ends July 25th. So I believe it's July 25th. So I will draw whatever the day after the summer learning series is and send out an email, whoever wins. So how can you enter the drawing? You can go to this website, so lindytext.com/summerlearning24. I will pull it up in a second and show you what it looks like, but I'll pause here. You can also scan this QR code if you're on a mobile device. Just open the camera, hold it up to that code, and it will launch the website for you automatically. I'll flip over to the website. I will come back to that in case you missed it. So this is what the website looks like. If you scroll down, here is the enter the giveaway. If you look for the purple buttons, those are like your links. So enter giveaway, click that, put your name, make sure to give a good mailing address so I can mail the book to you if you win. I also have on this site a link to the slides. So all of the slides that I'm going to show are linked from here. There's lots of links to different templates and resources within those slides. And then I gave you a few other resources to some different blog posts and such on this page as well. So hopping back to the slides, once again, lindytext.com/summerlearning24 will take you to that website, or just scan this handy little QR code right here. All right, if you need to, you can always pause and view that. I'm going to go ahead and move on, and let's talk about modern assessments. So even before the pandemic, I was hearing from a lot of teachers that student engagement was a major challenge. And a lot of teachers telling me, this group of learners, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're just different. And I'm struggling to engage them with the learning process. And then the pandemic happened, and that got even more so. It seemed like every educator I talked to said a major challenge in my classroom and my school in general is engagement. So I stepped back and thought about, okay, what can we do to try to engage learners more in the learning process? And I came up with this idea of modern assessments. And the idea behind a modern assessment is that it appeals to students' worlds. It takes what they do in their spare time and brings it into the classroom in a classroom school friendly way. I always tell teachers, and in my own teaching, I always think of like, what are students spending their spare time doing? What are they choosing to do in their spare time? And sometimes choosing to do within school time as well, right? And if you can bring that into learning, into the classroom, into your instruction in some way or another, of course, engagement's never guaranteed, but you have a chance of potentially increasing engagement. And Gen Z and Gen Alpha learners live to share to authentic audiences, right? They've got TikTok channels, they're making TikTok videos, and they've got YouTube channels, I should say TikTok accounts, YouTube channels where they're making videos and they're sharing out to the world of whatever it is that they're passionate about, or maybe they're just doing a viral dance challenge, whatever it is, they're sharing authentically to the world. A modern assessment focuses on synthesizing information to create visual multimedia products. And that was kind of like my list of like, here's some characteristics of modern assessments. And it kind of ended there. And then November of 2022 happened. This day will go down in infamy. This month, more like November 2022 is when ChatGPT was released. And this was the first time that generative AI, with the release of ChatGPT, I should specify, the first time that generative AI was available to the masses, to the public for free. This wasn't when generative AI was created. It's been around a long time, but this is when anybody could go create a ChatGPT account for free, as long as they had a device and internet and had access to generative AI. And it really, really changed everything in terms of the AI landscape and the tech landscape. If you're not familiar with the term generative AI is AI that can create or generate new content. So in the case of ChatGPT, as an example, it can generate text, does text to text. If you have the paid version of ChatGPT, it also does text to images and will generate images for you. I just learned about a tool last week called Suno that does text to audio or text to music, and it will actually create music from a text prompt. Those are all examples of generative AI. AI has been around for decades, since the 1950s specifically, but most of the AI that the general public was interacting with and experiencing was very predictive AI in nature. Sometimes conversational AI like Alexa, Siri. I have to be careful. Got my Alexa right here. It's going to start talking to me as I say that, right? That's an example of conversational AI. Predictive AI would be like your spam filters in your email, fraud alerts on your credit card. So ChatGPT was the first time that the general public had access to this generative AI that creates and generates new content. If you have not dove into what AI can generate, you need to, because you have to understand where the technology is as an educator in order to fully understand the implications on your curriculum, instruction, the world that your students live in order to adapt your classroom to that world. So just to give you a few examples, and this changes every day, by the way, changes and improves. The outputs improve. Currently, the way that generative AI works, which I don't expect that to change much with the technology, is you have an input like text and you have an output, text, images, music, audio, right? And everybody, hopefully if you haven't seen ChatGPT, go do this. Stop this recording and go do it right now. Go play around with ChatGPT or another AI chatbot, Copilot, Claude, Gemini, Meta AI. Go play around with it and get an idea of text to text generation. But what I find is some people haven't dug further to see just what generative AI can generate. Just to give a few quick examples, we now can do text to 3D. There's a specific tool called Sloyd, Sloyd, that you can give it a text prompt and it'll create a 3D model for you. People spend years learning how to do 3D modeling, and it takes like hours and days to create a 3D model sometimes. And now we can do it in seconds with generative AI. We can also generate code. Generative AI can generate code. So software engineers are really leveraging it to help them think about maybe writing code in different ways or saving them a ton of time instead of them having to do all of the manual inputs They can give a prompt and have the code come out for them. There's a tool called Recast. That's a text to audio tool. But even more specifically, there's a lot of text to audio tools out there. 11 Labs, Well Said Labs are a couple examples you should go explore. And they're getting really good where the AI does not sound AI robot-esque. Sounds very realistic. Those examples like Well Said Labs and 11 Labs are really designed to repeat, not just, but repeat. Like you give them something to read and they read it exactly. What Recast does is it actually takes, say, a blog post. And if you're interested in experimenting and learning about it, go to my blog. I have a Recast example on almost every one of my most recent blogs in the last year. It takes, say, a blog post or a website, an article, and it summarizes it and it turns it into a podcast format with two people, two AIs talking back and forth. So it not only just reads it, but it summarizes it and turns it into a conversational dialogue. To me, that really gives you a sense of where the technology is and the power it has and where it's going. So all of that to kind of set the scene in talking about this idea that some tasks can be copy and pasted, others open the opportunity to collaborate with AI. In order to really understand how to think about maybe melding your assessment practices, you need to understand what can generative AI do well and what can it not do well. And that's going to tell you what learning tasks can be copy and pasted versus which do more open the opportunity to collaborate, not just copy and pastable, but collaborate. Keep in mind, this is changing every day, literally. Like I said, changing and improving. The outputs are improving every single day. So that's another reason why you kind of have to stay on top of it as an educator, right? But currently, the way the technology stands right now is anything that's a text to text, text input to text output only can be done quite well by AI. Pretty well, quite well. Same thing. Pretty well. Not very good English. Quite well. By AI. So if you have assessments that are multiple choice, short answers, many essays and writing assignments can be completed by AI and be pretty copy and pastable, right? Some education institutions and people in the education community have said, that's fine. We'll just use AI content detectors as our solution. That'll tell us if content, text specifically, is generated by AI or a human. But there are more and more studies coming out every day showing that they just do not work. And when you understand the technology, you understand why they don't work and why they will never work. And they'll actually most likely get less and less effective. And they already are getting less and less effective, really. This is a resource, and it's actually a little bit old now. I need to see if I can find an updated one that shows that you're literally better off flipping a coin to determine if content is AI generated or human generated as you are using an AI content detector. And there's also a link on slide 18, and I believe I put it in the website as well, to a blog post I wrote. Yeah, right here. So you've got it on the website about rethinking AI detectors in education. It's got linked to studies and different resources that you can explore. So I would really, really, really challenge you to explore that AI content detectors just can absolutely not be the solution. I could go on and on about that, but we'll stop there. So that's kind of what AI does well. What does AI currently not do well? Again, this could change, but currently it doesn't do multimedia well. And that's not a typo. I meant that. What I mean by multimedia is, let me back up a few slides here, actually, because this gives us a good visual. I told you that currently you've got an input that results in an output. But if you notice, those inputs to outputs are very one-to-one. Like, yes, I can do a text to video. I didn't talk about that. If you haven't seen Sora, S-O-R-A by OpenAI, as I'm saying this, it hasn't been released to the public yet, but you can go to their site and you can see sample videos that it's generated. It's mind-blowing and is really having a huge effect on the movie industry and television industry because it is so high quality. But it's still very much, there's not much you can customize. Like, you can't I haven't seen a text to video creator yet. There might be one that exists, or might be one that exists by the time you're watching this, where you can do a lot of customization of that video. Still very much kind of a one-to-one output. So what I mean by the idea of multimedia is that yes, it can generate audio, yes, it can generate videos, yes, it can generate images, but it doesn't do a good job of putting all of those together and customizing it. That's the multimedia element. I told you that the text to audio, the AI speech is getting better and better and super realistic. It's getting harder and harder to discern a AI and human voice, but it still only does stop, pause, time out. Let's try that again. It still only does very formal human speech, meaning like I tell it exactly what to say and it says that. It doesn't do informal rifted human speech like what I'm doing right now, whether you like it or not. I'm not reading from a teleprompter. This is whatever's coming to my brain is coming out of my mouth at that moment, right? It's informal human speech. That would sound very different than me reading something in a very formal speech. AI doesn't do that informal rifted speech. It also just doesn't add that human touch. And I don't know if it ever will. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We'll see if we can get it to add that human flair to it. So going back to the idea of modern assessments, now that we've talked a little bit about where the technology is, what it can do, right, what it cannot do, when ChatGPT was released, I was like, oh boy, this is really going to change the game. And I went back to, as I started thinking about assessment practices and how they're going to need to meld and change, I went back to my list of modern assessment characteristics. And I was like, you know what? This still applies. And I just added one note and just said, a modern assessment allows for collaboration with AI, but can't be completed fully by AI. The last thing we want to do as educators is give students learning tasks that they can just go copy and paste for multiple different reasons, right? So then that kind of led me into thinking about, all right, what would these assessments look like? And honestly, my modern assessments didn't change that much. And I was looking at my modern assessments. I'm like, oh, I came up with this idea of an analogy of building a puzzle. Okay. So this is your rules of thumb or analogy that I told you I was going to give you about thinking about crafting assessments in the age of AI. I like to use the example of a toddler. If you were to give a toddler one piece of a puzzle, that's not a puzzle. One piece isn't a puzzle, right? You gotta have at least two pieces to have a puzzle. If you gave a toddler two pieces of a puzzle, they'd at least have to stop and think for a second, maybe even a half second before figuring out how to put those two pieces together. So there's not a whole lot of critical thinking involved with a two-piece puzzle. If I had a third piece, now we at least have to stop and ponder which piece fits where. Then as I add the fourth piece and the fifth piece, more critical thinking and problem solving starts happening, right? Of thinking how to put those puzzle pieces together if you're a toddler. So my analogy when it comes to AI-friendly learning tasks or assessments is that you need to have at least three pieces, and really I should change that and say at least four pieces. You really need at least four pieces of the puzzle. 4, 5, 6 pieces of the puzzle is even better. And what I mean by pieces of the puzzle is the pieces of the puzzle can be text, but it can't only be text because we've already established that if you have a text-to-text only assessment, it's copy and pastable for the most part, most of them. You could have images, you could have audio, you could have video, you could have voice reflection via audio and or video, right? You can have annotations. And somebody asked me once when I was doing this session, they said, what do you mean by annotations? And I actually talk about annotations a lot in all the sessions I do. And sometimes that terminology confuses people. And one time I just said, purposeful, it's like purposeful doodling. And I'm like, oh, I really like that explanation, right? It's this idea that we're circling and pointing arrows to things to kind of annotate and explain our thinking, our understanding. You can also have a piece of the puzzle can be collaborations with AI, and I highly recommend that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Other things to think about in terms of creating AI-friendly learning tasks is anytime you add a personal element, it's going to make it just a little bit harder for an AI to add that personal element to it. adding the voice and that, especially that voice reflection. Remember, it doesn't do well with informal, rifted human speech. I'll talk more about that. Any type of reflection, especially a voice reflection, and bringing in current events. So the way that current AI chatbots work, they're all built on what are called large language models, or LLMs. And these LLMs are trained on vast data sets, but those data sets are fixed. So all this data, and imagine all this data being like the entirety of the internet is taken and pulled in to create the data set for a large language model, but no new news, current events are added to that data set. That's what's called the knowledge cutoff. So depending upon, each large language model has a different knowledge cutoff depending upon when that data set was pulled to train and create that large language model. Any information that happened after that knowledge cutoff, that AI isn't going to know. The technology might change. That might not be an issue in the future, but currently that's where we're at with the technology. So sorry, one more thing about that before I move forward. So what to know here is anytime you can add in a current event, you're more likely to add just another piece of that puzzle, right? To add just a little bit more critical thinking and problem solving and not make that learning task fully copy and pastable. All right, so now I'm going to show you an example of an assessment that kind of uses that this puzzle analogy, okay? Couple caveats before I get into it. Remember the idea of a modern assessment. It appeals to students' worlds. It brings in what they do in their spare time. So for this example, we are going to use snaps. And don't worry, we're not going to use the Snapchat app. We are going to recreate the experience of creating snaps in Snapchat in a school-friendly tool, okay? Sometimes the snap element throws people off if they've never used Snapchat, they're not familiar with it. You don't have to add the Snapchat element. Again, it's just that one little extra oomph to create a modern assessment to try to engage learners because they do so much Snapchatting in their spare time. You could totally get rid of that Snapchat element if it throws you off. If you're not familiar with snaps, they can be images or videos. They're always very short. They always have like a text caption, annotations. This is an example of an annotation, this red circle here, by the way. They can have emojis, bitmojis, stickers. Here's text captions, right? These are two examples of a image snapshot, but they can be video. All right, next caveat is this next slide is pretty crazy because I wanted to give you the full picture of the assessment. So it turned into the slide being very text heavy. So just keep that in mind. One other caveat I wanted to introduce here. It's gone. Moving forward. So here is an example for you to think about, kind of a AI-friendly learning task. So this is an example for an art class, by the way, probably more like a high school art history class. They're going to explain in a series of snaps what characteristics identify art from the Impressionist movement. So they're learning about Impressionist art, and they are going to take and figure out what characteristics embodied art from the Impressionist movement, and then explain it via a series of snaps. There's kind of two pieces to this assignment. Piece one is they need to go find 3 examples of Impressionist art that exists out there. So they might find a Monet painting, right? And then they use those 3 examples to identify those characteristics from the Impressionist movement. So this is where they specifically have to use annotation to really point out those characteristics in their examples. So that's kind of part 1. Part 2 of the assignment is we are going to, I remember what I was going to say about this. I will come back to that in a second. We are going to embrace AI. We're going to collaborate with AI. So this is a perfect example to have your students explore a text-to-image AI generation tool. So they're actually going to use an AI image generator to create an example of Impressionist art that doesn't actually exist in real life, but embodies those characteristics of Impressionist art. Okay. And then again, they need to label, annotate over that example to kind of show how that newly created Impressionist art example exemplifies those characteristics. What I was going to say before I jump into the example is I we collaborate with AI. So one piece of this collaboration is the AI image generator. The other piece of this is that we are going to leverage AI to learn about the characteristics of the Impressionist art period. That's not the only way that we'll learn about the characteristics, but it's a really great way to help summarize those characteristics. So I always say the elephant in the room is that this parts of this assignment AI can really help with, right? And to me, that's perfectly okay. And that's where we have to move as educators, again, collaborating with the AI. So I would start this by having a lesson where, we learn about we learn about Impressionist art in various different ways, maybe watch some videos, and I would use a student approved AI tool to have them go and ask it, what are the characteristics of Impressionist art? And it would help summarize that information for them. You could determine and you could play around with, maybe we do research and then we have the AI summarize, or maybe we have the AI summarize and then we do research to kind of fact check the AI, etc. Okay, now moving on. So I told you we're going to recreate the experience of Snapchat in a school-friendly tool. I have 2 templates for you. One's in Canva, one's in Google Slides. I would highly recommend using Canva if you can. Canva for Education is free to schools, teachers, students. You just go to canva.com/education and create an education account. Have your school set this up if you can. It has a really great annotation tool, and it has a text-to-image generator built within it. You can do this in the Google. If you don't have access to Canva, you can use Google Slides. The only caveat with Google Slides is the annotation feature is not great. You can do it. You can do a drawing doodle, but it's not great. And it doesn't have the text to image generator to do that AI collaboration piece. So just keep that in mind. But there's links to both templates here. This is on slide 27 for you. So to show you what the Canva template looks like, once you click on that template, as long as you're signed into your Canva account, it will ask you to make a copy of the template. And there's instructions in there. There's an example. There's several different templates. There's, I think, 3 to be exact, different templates that you can choose from. You can use 1, you could use 2, you could use all, right? You can let students choose which template they want to work from. So this is kind of what the blank template looks like here. And then this is what the final example looks like. So that kind of shows you what the Canva view is. Google Slides, here's the Google Slides view, very, very similar. Then this is kind of our final product. So this is part 1 of the assignment where I told them they had to have 3 different examples of Impressionist art. So we got 3 different pictures here. And remember, the idea is to kind of recreate the Snapchat experience. So they've got their text captions, they've got their annotations, these pink here, right? So they've identified 3 different characteristics of Impressionist art, and then they've explained and annotated over those images where they found those characteristics in these particular examples. And then here's part 2, where they used the Canva text-to-image generator and created a new example of Impressionist art and then explained how that example embodies the characteristics of Impressionist art. Now, you could end this there, but I highly recommend adding what I call the cherry on top. So going back to my puzzle analogy, I said that voice reflection to me is a huge part of that puzzle. And just pausing there for a second before I talk more about that, I think that there's certain puzzle pieces that add much more of a punch than other puzzle pieces. And one of them is the voice reflection piece, and one of them is the annotations, because that is something that AI just cannot do. That really adds that AI component, or excuse me, that human component to it. So again, you don't have to, but I think that reflecting via a screencast is going to become a huge part of our assessment practices moving forward as humans in the age of AI, because it has the students explain their learning, explain their thought processes and their reasoning. And if you've never done this with your students, I highly recommend it, because it really gets you this inside view into their understanding of a concept and whether they're understanding or not. And if they're not understanding, it helps you kind of target maybe where you need to intervene to help them move forward in meeting that learning outcome and standard. It also ensures integrity. right? Because we're hearing their voice explain it. It's hard to explain something verbally that you don't understand, right? That's why they say, teachers are the ultimate understanders, because in order to understanders, not a word. I like to make up words if you know me. Right? Like you have to really understand something in order to teach it to somebody else. And that's what a screencast video makes your students do. So Canva has a record yourself feature, and it's awesome. You don't have to download anything. There's no add-ons, anything. You just go to the uploads tab over on the left and you click the record yourself button, and it embeds your video right into it. It's really, really great. Google Slides now, within the last few months, has also added a video record tool. So if you don't have access to Canva. All right, so that's your example. Now going back to this puzzle analogy, right? These rules of thumb for creating AI-friendly learning tasks. Hopefully this makes a little bit more sense. So in that example, we had a lot of puzzle pieces. We had text, we had images, we had annotations, we had collaborations with AI. We had voice reflection via the screencast, right? What else do we have there? The video element with the voice reflection. So lots of different puzzle pieces that require that critical thinking of learners to put those different pieces together to ensure integrity and comprehension. Other screencast tools, if you don't have access to Canva, Google Slides, there's a million of them. Screencastify, ScreenPal, Loom. You can also use a video call tool. Actually, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm recording in Zoom. Just shared my screen and hit record in Zoom. Boom, it's done. If you have Microsoft Teams or Google Meet, you can do the same thing. All right, so I already kind of talked about this, but just to kind of come back and wrap it up, we need to, it's not the elephant in the room, that we could go to an AI chatbot and ask it what characteristics identify art from the Impressionist movement, and it's going to tell it to us, right? I'll talk more about that in a second. We did AI collaborations here. So while it's possible to seek answers from an AI chatbot, I really think that's okay, because we're collaborating with AI. And the true essence of the assessment is the ability to comprehend and synthesize that information into an authentic creation, right? And that's something that an AI can't do. So yes, we can collaborate with AI and it can give us those summaries. This is just some of my thinkings on the topic. I've thought a lot about this, and I'm like, what's cool about it is it saves us a ton of time. So versus having to do an internet search and go to 5 different websites and try to read, and then those websites aren't in my reading level as a learner, so I don't quite understand. So then I have to go find another website that is at my reading level as a learner, right? That takes a ton of time and a ton of cognitive load for a lot of learners. So by asking an AI chatbot to summarize the characteristics of Impressionist art, we can still fact check that, but it gives us such a great starting point to save time and reduce cognitive load as a learner. Does it then open up both our time and our mental capacity, because we're reducing that cognitive load, to be able to nurture our creative abilities more, right? To be able to add annotations and add voice reflections and create videos, be more creative in showing our learning. Does then, since you have more time and you have more mental capacity, does it allow us to think deeper as humans? Can we then solve more complex problems, right? So again, this is just kind of my musings on this, something to leave you with and think about, that if we embrace collaborating with AI as educators, it might take us places that we've never been able to go before due to time constraints, cognitive load constraints, etc. So Canva, I have kind of my top 3 tools for the AI age and being able to create these AI-friendly assessments and take this puzzle piece analogy and pull different pieces of multimedia together to ensure comprehension and require critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Canva. My second one is Book Creator. It's great for any K-12 age, but especially great for K-5. It doesn't have to be creating books. They're very much set up like books, but you can get really creative and doing other things and not just books. It has all of the features that you need as a teacher moving into the age of AI embedded. has an annotation tool. It's got that screen record tool. It also has just an audio record tool. If your students don't want to show their faces, they can just do the audio record feature. You can do that in Google Slides and Canva as well. I'm not sure I mentioned that. Another one is Flip. I should mention, so Canva for Education is free to schools as long as you sign up for Canva for Education. Book Creator is a freemium product, so you get basics for free and then you can upgrade to get more. Flip is owned by Microsoft and it's completely free to educators. And if you've never used Flip, I think this is going to be one of our number one tools going into the AI age. It basically creates like a video board, and each video, I should say, pops up in this board. So it makes it really easy for you as a teacher to go through and view the different videos because it puts it all in one place. That's advantage number one. Advantage number two is that it has basically every feature of a screencasting tool built in with it. You can share your screen, you can talk, you can choose to turn your video on and off, you can add annotations, there's emojis built in there. So sometimes students, if they don't want to show their face, I'll have them put an emoji over their face on their video, or maybe they don't want to show their background. If they're learning from home, they can block out their background and put virtual backgrounds up. Really great tool, especially for building that puzzle analogy. All right, wrapping up here. I put a link in the slides. I also put it in your resource site, which I will put this link back up in a second if you didn't get it, to a couple different blog posts actually about this idea of assessing learning in the age of AI. One is on my blog, one I wrote for the TCA blog. So those are both there for you. Here is a link to the website again if you need it. I am here to support you. Again, connect with me at Lindy Hockenbary on socials. If you go to this site, you're on my website and it has a link to all my socials on there as well. You can also sign up. I do a monthly email newsletter. It's a great way to connect with me. I am supporting a lot of schools and educators via training and professional development on everything AI. So reach out to me if you're looking for answers, training, anything. Would love to help support you and your school as well. I hope you are enjoying your summer and relish in these last few weeks. Depending upon when you come back to school, it might be less weeks than others that are listening. And thanks for joining me. And I hope to learn more with you.